I've been wondering, there's a third term very related to those two, which is inscription.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And I was wondering.
Yeah. Well, whatever, you know, if you have prescription up here, any inscription that is down here, because you're writing something, okay, that becomes a description. It's fixed. I'm not going to change that. I am not going to edit that. That's the way that it is, you know. I mean, I'm giving that as an example. That's me in a manuscript. No, I'm not going to change it. No, you cannot have this. If you expect me to change this sentence, I'm leaving. I'll find it. I'll publish it myself in my own journal. Kind of stupid. I usually go through that in my head. I don't say that to somebody else. It's like I've got to, you know, shit it out of my body, you know, sweat it out of my pores or something like that. But it's, so when each time you think, each time you write, each time you do anything, you start with a prescription, with the understanding, that is, that you can redo it. Now, that presupposition is the notion of reversibility. Okay? And so there's a huge doctrine, especially in Greek tragedy, which obviously informed Greek philosophy, right? Okay? That some things are irreversible. In Nicomachean Ethics, that book again, what Aristotle says is that Troy is irreversible. The gods cannot reverse it. One lives with this. What that also says to us today, in terms of what I was talking about here about rewriting inscription, you asked that. We can't rewrite that story. But damn it, it's been rewritten. Krista Wolf, her novel, Cassandra, she rewrites it. And Herodotus has a version of Helen going to Egypt and not to Troy, and so on. So there are other versions out there. But the question now becomes, what is this all about? We know that there are other versions, okay? We can retell that story. We're talking about Troy is foundation for our civilization. And why it got started. Some guy by the name of Paris went over, stole from Menelaus, his wife, Helen, and took her to Troy. Okay. And that she was taken is only a pretext for fighting. Okay. That's not the issue. And it goes on, it goes on, it goes on. And it becomes a grounding image for us. I mean, we were talking about a decade or so ago. We were talking about the Gulf War and so on in our relationships with the Persians, the Iranians. It's like Troy all over it. They say. And this person, by the name of Spengler, wrote his dissertation. This thing begins to reverberate, right? About the downfall of the West, okay? the decline of the West, saying that the movement is going to move not from west to east, but from east to west. Okay? And who read that book? Who was our Secretary of State?
When?
At a crucial time. Not any time recent. Under Nixon. Kissinger. He had read it and he believed it. And so, this was found, and then people began to infer from that, and with a certain amount of weight behind it, right? Mm-hmm. But it was an inference. Okay. What's the other word for inference and logic? Abduction. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting?
But it's not the same one.
Well, no, it's not. But it's called abduction. So now we're all of a sudden talking about Troy again. We're talking about Helen being, in the language that is used, is abducted, not raped. Although in certain documents that we have, the word, the Greek word for rape is there. But it doesn't mean what it means for us. Okay. And so therefore there was never any rape during that period of time. Because the word, I mean, some classicists argue that. No, it wasn't rape until we finally got this word saying that it was a rape. Sexual violence. This is crazy. Because even if that were true, okay, we still use those founding stories to think with and through. They're grand narratives. Okay, now we're back to as if we ever left him. Lyotard. That's why he argues in the postmodern condition that we need to move towards little stories, not these grand myths that are then the founding ones that tell us what to do. You know, I'm sorry, Father, I cannot tell a lie. I chopped down the cherry tree. So, all of this is open to revision. What is inscribed can be re-inscribed. And that's just really liberating. It can be. I mean, you could not, I mean, this is the stuff of a healthy species. And this is what Nietzsche was working on, and he called helpful. When he wrote The Birth of Tragedy as his great philological experiment, he was attacked, really vicious. I mean, I've seen some of the letters that were fairly recently discovered that Wilhelmowitz Moellendorff wrote, because he didn't get the job. He was 2 years younger than, and really, Nietzsche just graduated, you know.
Did he not yet have his dissertation?
No, and he just got this great job you know, right up the road. Basel. Okay. And that just pissed, you know, off Wilhelmowitz Moellendorff, who wrote the letters. I mean, on his deathbed, he was still talking about it. Talking about becoming an emotional slave of somebody, you see. Now, this is the very thing that Nietzsche kept talking about. This is truly evil, and we're bringing it upon ourselves. Oh, we need to think that we can do that, okay? Because we, in fact, we need to stop that. Okay? That's it, and this comes out of this, for example, this genealogy of laws. Okay. So we have people here who are our friends, Jean-Luc Muncy, who talks about a community without community. And what does he say up front in the inoperative community? He gets it from Bataille, who says, the thinking of the subject, or of subjectivity, right? Or as we say in capitalism, individualism. Okay? The thinking of the subject thwarts community. Now that's, well, isn't community a bunch of subjects? You just pull them in like a bunch of cows make a herd? Okay. It's the very idea of identification. I mean, this is a massive charge against the first principle of logic or of philosophy, identity. Okay, let's go back. I'm sorry, I'm going back to jumping now. It's as if I didn't take my med or something like that. Okay.
It doesn't stop taking them.
Okay. Think of The Birth of Tragedy. What was tragedy to begin with? It had the Dionysian. Have you read The Birth of Tragedy? Yeah, oh, please do. I mean, it's, give yourself a gift of many nightmares. So.
Compared to what?
To Apollonian.
Just in terms of...
In the Dionysian position, okay, there is no identity whatsoever. Dionysus is not a particular person, or it is a getting together in Dionysian rites where we would call these today, orgies, okay? But that totally invites you to misunderstand it, okay? There is this mass that is together, and there is all loss of any notion of individuality. That's one possible way of thinking of community. But as the birth of tragedy occurs, actually it becomes in the book, the death of tragedy. It moves to someone in the group, in the mass of people, the Dionysian mass, that wears a mask. It is identified then as Dionysus. So you have the beginning of the principle of individuation. in that we're talking about subjects. What is subject? Subject is one of these words of substance. You have grounding. There's a descriptive that's there. Really, you have to have a life of poetry, and crazy kinds of poetry to be able to follow this. And if you're too much of a rationalist, you're not going to be able to follow any of this. And what progressively happens is what, especially up when we have Socrates and Euripides and all the others, is that our self-reflections become rules, okay, that then become truths. And that's when community is in a sense killed, the death of it. And in the tragedies, in the tragedies are the tragedy of knowledge, not being able to have it, okay, or the tragedy of no community either, okay. Communities fighting against communities. What happens is that it becomes more and more rational, and the masses of people in a Dionysian rite where they lose all sense of identity becomes the chorus. Strophus. And over here, antistrophos. And it's like, and what is this becoming? Dialectics. Eventually. Okay. That kind of thing. And then Euripides actually gets up on the stage and says, okay, I've read this play, and let me tell you what it's all about. There's the addressor position, which is this. The authority. Hell, I wrote it, man. I know what it's about. Okay? It's this kind of thing.
Question. It's just my meager understanding of Greek tragedy is that it's not what we consider tragedy. What's tragic in Greek tragedy is everybody is doing exactly what they should be doing to the best of their ability. It's just that they're on trajectories that are completely opposed. And so by fulfilling themselves as in their lives as they go, they have to inherently clash by being true to themselves. There's disaster.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's very, 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 very important. A tragedy is not good versus evil.
Right. It's good versus...
And stupid, I mean, if we think that that's it. And that's the melodramatic world. People who want us to stay in their particular little community, they bait us that way too, and we take it. Now, I've got the word down, okay. A tragedy is when you have two goods, and there is no way to adjudicate between the two. And through sheer power, one overthrows.
Exactly.
And what's one of the great examples of that? Judy Belper's written about it, a bunch of other.
Tip of tongue.
Antigone?
Antigone.
Thank you. That one.
Brother and sister, and then the problem of, is it fusus or nomus? What's going to be the ground for the burial and whatever, okay. Fusus is nature, it's fixed, it's fusus, it sounds pronounced, it's terrible affectation. I see people go fusus, and I just want to start laughing. So I say fusus. In custom over here, whereas this is fixed, it's descriptive. This over here is prescriptive, open to reinscriptions. So this is the tragedy, in a sense, to begin with. But there's something even above that is when you get two goods, and there's no way to adjudicate between the two. That's the tragedy of knowledge. And that's what the Greeks were wrestling with. I mean, there's this incredible heretical statement in here about Oedipus. We were talking about Oedipus earlier. I've got to find this. Give me a minute.